In Moscow, Bill Cole, our CBS News correspondent there, is standing by and perhaps can give us a report on how the Russians have taken this American achievement in space. Bill?
There's been a lot of praise for the bravery of the astronauts over here, but also there have been very serious doubts placed on the outcome of the Apollo mission. Soviet official sources have hinted that it's much too risky and premature for the United States to try now. They stress strongly that Soviet lunar spacecraft have already made the trip around the moon with automatic control systems. Yesterday, Boris Petrov, who's a leading space expert here, said in the first official report that a main feature of Apollo seems to be that it requires human hands to guide it, in contrast to Soviet vehicles.
Bill?
Yes, Walter?
I wonder if Dr. Georgy Petrov was reported in full or translated in full or whatnot, because it would seem that he should know that the American spacecraft can be automatically guided as well. Now, it's not a fully automated spacecraft in the sense that we have put men aboard, because that's the concept of American space travel, but it can be guided back to a safe landing, even if these men are incapable of operating the machinery, as I understand it.
That's true, but the thing that he stressed was the fact that Soviet vehicles have already made the trip around the moon, and the American craft has not been tried.
Well, aside from the scientific community in the Soviet Union, what about the man on the street, your chauffeur who took you down to the broadcast studio today? Did he have anything to say about this flight?
He had nothing at all to say about it. In the Soviet press, Russians are getting very brief, factual, even cold accounts of the Apollo 8 mission. But in all fairness to them, that's even more than they give their own space missions. The Soviet cosmonaut is a hero only when he returns after a successful flight.
There have been still no radio or television reports, only the brief printed word?
Very, very brief reports on radio and television. For example, this morning it wasn't even mentioned that Apollo 8 would reach the moon today.
And they haven't picked up any of the European Broadcast Union's relays from this side of our full reporting of the flight?
Not at all, but we hear here in Moscow that many of the satellite countries, I mean the other communist countries, are getting very regular reports on the mission, and some of them have even seen the Eurovision television reports, but they haven't been shown here.
Well, there were some reports earlier that the Soviet Union might be prepared to go when their window to the moon opened early in this month, and they did not, as we now, of course, know. Did you get the impression, or is the impression widespread in the Soviet Union, that they were planning to go at that time and for some reason or other simply could not make the flight? Or do you think that their plans really have not been to go at this early time?
Most people feel here that they plan to go later, that they plan to let us test the area, more or less.
Well, we are doing that, and so far with great success. There's no doubt, I suppose, in Moscow that this is a great American achievement, that they have lost at least a first in this particular regard.
That's true. There have been compliments from the three major spatial spokesmen here today, all complimenting the Apollo flight, but most newspaper comments seems to cast doubt on the reliability of the Apollo craft, and also they point out the great dangers of overdoses of radiation to the astronauts.
You know, it might be interesting today to be out at that space museum that there in Moscow, just on the other side of town, up on the way to the airport, I think it is, if I recall correctly.
I was out there this morning.
Were you? And no excitement or comment of the people viewing, who are passing through the museum today as they viewed the great achievements of their spacemen?
No more than usual.
Uh-huh. Well, thank you very much, Bill.